Perfect. Well, today on our video and audio podcast, I have Jessica Bishop on. She is the creator and the author of Budget Savvy Bride. Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am really excited to have you on the show. I know we have been working together with some collaborations last month, but I wanted to bring you to my listeners and now to my YouTube watchers and let them know all about you and Budget Savvy Bride and what it is that you give to the wedding community.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so happy to be here and to share whatever I can to help engaged couples.
Great. Well, let's get started with how you or where you started when you started Budget Savvy Bride and what got you there, because I really want to learn the background behind it.
Yeah, so I've been doing running the Budget Savvy Bride for over 11 years now, which is crazy. I was personally planning my own wedding back in 2008 and was freshly out of college. Both my partner and I at the time had very entry-level jobs. And of course, as we all know, the recession was happening in that period of 2008, 2009 when we were planning. We actually both got laid off from our jobs during that engagement period. So you can imagine the stress that we were under and already on a tight budget. And so I was kind of looking for information to, help myself plan a wedding that, as a girl, you think, I want to have a real wedding day. But I had this limited budget, and everywhere I went, it was a challenge because people were saying, "Oh, like you don't have enough. You don't have enough to like make it happen." And I'm like a very can-do person, and I'm a very like problem solver kind of person. And so I kind of started the Budget Savvy Bride as like a way to keep track of my ideas along the way and kind of record the tricks that I was coming up with and the resources that I found along the way. Just as like a personal creative outlet. And then over time, I think, the site really grew organically because there were so many other people in similar positions on a small budget, were dealing with the effects of the recession. Maybe their families couldn't contribute like ours couldn't. And, we're looking for ways to pull it off for less. And so that's really how the site got started. And fast forward to now, what I really try to do is share tons of free resources to help couples find ways to cut costs, tips, tricks, ideas, DIY projects, free printables, free downloadable checklists and timelines, all those sorts of things. And also one of the biggest things on the site is our real wedding features, where we share real weddings from couples all around the country and some even internationally, where the couples will share what they actually spent on their wedding day and like share their budget breakdown, which when you're working with a small budget is really helpful because you can really see how far your money can go if you spend smartly and make strategic decisions based on your personal priorities. And so, yeah, that's like the quick but kind of long version.
No, that's great. It's great. And I think that it's evolved so much. I mean, it's 11 years ago. We didn't have all the technology and all of the features of planning a wedding that we do now, which, in my mind can be a little overwhelming. But the other thing is, like you, I deal with the masses and I deal with a demographic that is on a budget or is trying to be on a budget. And it's very hard because there's not a lot of education out there. And there's a lot of people saying, oh, no, that's not going to happen. And I like that you have the feature that you're actually sharing so they can actually see a real, couple's a budget, what they actually spent, that they actually did it. And even if they're not, in that area where that couple got married, you said it's national and international. So there's kind of a guide for them to look at, and they don't have to feel like they're the only ones in that situation, which I feel a lot of couples do feel that way. And especially now too, that most couples are paying for their weddings. They may have a little bit of contribution from the family, but it's definitely not how it was before where, families were pitching in or paying for full weddings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that it's so helpful to be able to see how other couples were able to spend their budget and where they were able to kind of stretch it in certain ways, and, what their values are kind of reflect how they spend that budget. And yeah, you're totally right. Like, it doesn't matter what area of the country you're in, you can glean, insight and advice from these couples who've done it. And I think for me, like the biggest thing is just proving that it's possible, because there is so much messaging out there, from the major media companies and like the big, wedding brands that say like, oh no, you have to have this average budget of $30,000 or whatever it is to be able to have a real wedding. And that's just not true. And so I really just hope that it's an encouragement and an inspiration to all the couples out there who might not want to spend that much money, whether it's because they can't afford to or because they just don't want to and they have other priorities.
Right, right, which is very important. A lot of times they're not thinking about the next 3 to 5 years, and they're thinking about the now and what can we do. And a lot of that money that they can put aside for their future can be done with a website like yours. So kind of take me through how it works. So if I'm a couple and I am looking to utilize your resources, what would be the steps to get me there? So kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so on the website, in the main navigation, you can go to Real Weddings, and then you can browse our Real Wedding features by budget. So you can literally go and say, I have $5,000 to spend. I'm going to click on $5,000 weddings, and you can see all the weddings that we've published over the years on that budget. And I really recommend like reading through them and seeing how the couples broke things down. Obviously, when the smaller the budget, the more DIY aspects there tend to be, or perhaps, the smaller the guest list might be, but there's still really great like nuggets of wisdom. And that's the thing. It's like I started this site, like I said, when I was a bride myself, and I was just going through the planning process and trying to figure things out along the way. And, I wasn't an expert when I started. And so I think really, seeing other couples sharing that information and their personal insight is for the benefit of everybody. And so I love like lifting up couples and like giving them the chance to be like, I did this, I pulled this off, and it's really helpful for other people as well. So yeah, you can browse by budget, like I mentioned, or you can also browse by location. So we have them broken down for the 50 states, and then the international weddings that we featured, are also listed there. We're still adding to those. We'd love to feature more destination weddings because they're becoming more and more popular. And so we hope to do more of that in the future. And then we also have, the ability to browse by like color scheme and things like that. But yeah, those are a great place to start. And then I just actually this week published our first post in a new series that we're calling the Wedding Budget Diaries. And it's kind of like a more in-depth look at, really what a couple's values are and how they used those values and priorities, which I know is something that you really talk to your couples a lot about, is like really getting clear on like what's important to both of you as a couple, and using those values and priorities to guide your wedding planning decisions, and how you allocate your wedding budget as a result. And so I'm really excited about that series, and we have some really great insights coming up in those, and they are a bit more long form. But just giving couples a platform to like share their heart and their vision for their life through the choices that they're making with their weddings to start their marriages together.
That's amazing. And I think that you have it done so simple, because that's really the first place where couples do need to be educated on is a budget, because there's so many numbers out there. There's you can read blogs, you can go to different websites, and some say 18,000, some say 30,000, others say 50. So even if you don't have a budget in mind, you can start looking at under 5, under 10, and then going to see what's available. Not to say that you have to do exactly what's on them, but it's a guide. And that's one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about, is guiding couples, having them understand. And I think that also helps them create a vision of what they want for themselves, because not everybody wants to do the typical wedding, especially now. I really realize that the more creative couples are, the more outside of the box, and the more they do for themselves and have a reflection of their characteristics and their traditions in their wedding, it's a lot more fun on them and also on guests, because guests do attend a lot of weddings a year, especially if you're, out of college. So
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend of mine that I swear she's like either in a wedding every month or going to a wedding. I'm like, are all your friends like getting married in the same year? She's like, I feel like it. So it's nice for your guests to have something a little bit different. So talk about your book. I know you have a best-selling book.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that, and where do you think, couples would need that when they get engaged, or even before they get engaged? What's the process on your book as well?
Yeah. So the book came out, it'll be 2 years ago in February. The success of it has been completely overwhelming. And I'm so proud of it, honestly, because the feedback that I've gotten from the couples who've used it has been just like really stellar. And from what I've been told by the couples who have shared their feedback with me is that like one of the best features of it is kind of like really defining those values and priorities for yourself and for yourselves as a couple, and using those shared values to guide your wedding vision, and help you make those decisions all along the way. And of course, there's also, complete checklists, timelines, worksheets, questions that you and your partner can go through and ask each other, because it is so important that it's not just one person planning all the details. I know like stereotypically like, oh, it's the bride's day, whatever, but no, like whether you're a same-sex couple or a mixed gendered couple, like it should be both of you planning this day, because it's not just one person's day, it's both of yours, and it's the start of your lifetime of marriage together. And so I think that it's a really, really great tool for facilitating and starting those conversations that are so important to have. I know you find that so important in what you do as well. And that's why, like, I think that you and I connect so well, because I think we both just really believe that doing this sort of foundational work on your relationship before you even think about the wedding planning part of it is so important. And so, and I'm sorry, I keep looking at it because like the book is right here. If you want to see it.
I love it.
But yeah, so it's a great tool, and it's like amazingly priced too. It's like $8 on Amazon. If you have Prime, it'll be to your house like the next day or 2 days. So I highly recommend it. I recommend starting and reading it and going through those introductory questions really before you start planning anything whatsoever. So yeah.
That's great. And one of the things that you said that I really like is just obviously same values that I share with my couples is setting your foundation, because it does set the tone. It's definitely should not be one-sided, but I also think and just have seen the stress level go down when it is planned together, because every single one of us has strengths and opportunities. And, one of the things that a bride or a groom, or, bride and a groom and a groom may have, like, someone may not want to do all the, the seating chart and making sure that, the RSVPs are in. And I don't think couples realize how much is involved in the wedding planning process, that if you can divvy that up and have, your partner do what he's good at or she's good at, and vice versa, those couples that plan together really do have a stress-free journey. And they're excited when I'm meeting with them, when I'm talking to them. And they're also so kind of ahead of the game that they're able to add in at the last minute. They're able to enjoy being engaged, where they can just really say, okay, we're done. Everything's done. They may have a wedding planner, may not have a wedding planner, but they have managed to get it all. And they're also not thinking about what everybody else is telling them. They're not letting society pressure them, their friends. They're like, this is my time, my wedding. We want to be selfish. So I love the fact that your planner, it's a planner, it's a guide, it's an organizer, kind of gets them there too before they even start the wedding planning process.
Yeah, for sure. And then it has everything broken down to get you every step of the way through that planning process. So it's definitely like just a great overall tool as you're entering into this whole journey of marriage together. But I think it's so interesting because it's like not just about like, you're engaged to be married, but like both partners need to be engaged in the process as well. And so I think anything that, facilitates those sort of like tough conversations and makes space for, both partners coming together to make these joint decisions is just great. And especially, the content that you share with this podcast, I think is a really big part of that. It's like, these are the resources that more couples need to be hearing from, instead of, the greater, societal pressures to spend, and like wedding must-haves and everything that kind of like blows up out out of control and out of proportion. So yeah, anything that really just kind of takes things back to basics and reminds couples to focus on what's actually important, that you're starting a life together, you're starting a marriage, and keeping that as the focus of everything is great.
Yeah, and I've come to see too, I mean, you are, like you said, you want to be engaged through this process. It's kind of one of the most difficult stages in your life because there's a lot of decisions that you have to make together, and a lot of times they're not made together, but it also sets up your foundation for every other major decision that you're going to have in life. So if that's with work, if that's moving, if that's with kids, so a lot of times it's one-sided, and you're setting the tone and almost kind of an expectation of, well, I took care of the wedding, this was how I wanted it, so the next major decision in life, it's going to be really, really hard when it's only one-sided. So that's another thing that I like that you're including. It's very inclusive on both sides. Do you work one-on-one with clients, or is it more, I want to hear a little bit about that. Do you have one-on-one couples, or is it just more of a service and a community that you have for couples?
So far, it's really just been about the community and sharing information. I have not personally worked one-on-one with clients in any official capacity. I've helped lots of friends over the years and things like that. And I've worked in like almost every aspect of the wedding industry you could imagine. My first job when I was in high school, my first part-time job was working at like a wedding cake bakery. And so it's, I've assisted photographers, I've assisted day of coordinators. I have, done photo editing. I used to design custom wedding invitations. It's like I've literally seen every aspect of the wedding industry at this point. But yeah, I don't personally work directly one-on-one with couples, but I do have a really active Facebook group. We're at, I think, over 6,000 members right now. And so I love to, share advice and feedback and things like that as much as I can there. And of course, I've been writing content for the website. My best advice to try to reach the most people as possible in that way. There are, times when I think about like perhaps, making a course or offering some sort of like group coaching or something like that, just to try to help as many people as possible. Instead of like on a one-on-one basis where it's limited, there's only so much time. So
yeah, and it's hard to especially with so many people getting married, but I know that that's something that'll come up, and that may be something in the future for you, since you already have a guide and a book, having a course. And that's something that with the podcast and Just Engage University, it's almost, like that season of engagement. And again, it's different for everyone. I always recommend a good year, just because there's so many, pieces to the puzzle. But within that year, having I currently coach one-on-one couples, and it is come to my attention that they do need it. And it's a little bit like therapy, and the fact that there's a third person telling both, that this is something that has to be done, because it's going to eliminate, again, the stress. It's going to eliminate having these conversations. And a lot of the expectation is that this stuff gets done after you get married, or these conversations are supposed to happen after you get married. And it's really not. And it's very important that they, and unfortunately, and I've said this in other podcasts, some people are not compatible, and they think just because they've been together for a certain amount of time, or just because it feels like this is the best that it's going to be, they end up putting themselves in a situation later on that they regret. And that's, again, because they're just not educated. No one's really giving them the information of what they need to be doing while they're engaged. That's why it's called engagement.
100%. I can totally relate to that. I think, I look back now and I think nobody should be getting married before they're 30, but of course, everybody's different. But I definitely thought I was so mature and knew everything, and that love would be enough to get us through anything that we might face. And I think there's so much benefit to having a long engagement, really taking time to dig into those conversations. I know, depending on where you're living and where you're getting married, like certain states offer discounts on your marriage license if you do premarital counseling prior. But the requirements are pretty loose in a lot of cases, and it might only be one session or two sessions. I really encourage couples to even consider seeking out a couples therapist before they get married, because it's a serious commitment. You're entering into, a lifetime commitment with somebody, and a legally binding one. And so, really taking the time to get really, really clear on, your shared values and priorities, and hopefully they are shared, and your visions for your life align with one another. And there's obviously a lot of growth that couples go through over time, and you just never know what life's going to throw at you. So yeah, I think a long engagement is definitely not a bad thing. And also, if you're on a budget, it gives you more time to save up.
Yes.
So
Yes. And one of the things I tell my couples, I don't want them going into debt for this. It's not worth it. It's definitely, you're going to be together for the rest of your life. So if you have a year or 2 year engagement, you're going to, I have tons of couples that are paid up, 3 or 4 months in advance, and they're able to enjoy going on a honeymoon that they want to do. They're also able to, if they're ready to buy a house, have a house fund. So there's just so many little things that are going to come after.
absolutely.
And I also love that you have on your Instagram. So I follow you everywhere, but your Instagram is my favorite because you have a really good way of sharing wedding tips. I know you do it on a weekly basis, and so kind of walk us through that. So if and Instagram is probably one of the best ways for anyone to look for wedding inspirations. But tell me about Instagram and how that kind of works and what you do for brides on there.
Yeah, sure. So one of my goals with Instagram is to not just show pretty photos, because although that's very inspiring, I think there's a real lack of transparency about like what things cost. And, I think it's really great to share tips and things for couples to keep in mind. And so one of the most popular features on our website is our series of wedding tips. And so we've translated that for Instagram as well, just because we want to reach as many couples as possible, and share this advice. And so, yeah, we share a tip every week, and they range from every aspect of your day, from, how to set your budget to, ways to cut costs on the cake or your venue, or, ways that you can, reduce the waste that you're, creating with your wedding day by either borrowing things or bartering, or, renting things instead of buying things new. Like, there's so many different tips that we share. And of course, all of them don't apply to everyone, because everyone's priorities are different. And of course, the version that you'll see on Instagram is an abbreviated version of the full posts that coordinate with every tip that have been shared on the website. But generally, we just, want to share creative ideas, outside the box ways to do things that, can save you money, especially if, in areas of lesser importance to you and your partner. I think it's very, very common for most couples to be spending on the things that are most important to them. They're spending according to their priorities. So if something's not a huge priority for you, then maybe that's an area you want to kind of like cut back on financially. And so, yeah, that's basically like what the tips are on Instagram. And we like to share different ways that those are executed as well, just to kind of give like a tangible example.
That's great. So what is your preferred method for couples to really work with you, or I guess shouldn't say work with you, but couples to get tools and resources from you? So the website is really the easiest way to get everything that they need. Okay.
The website is the key to everything. And there's a lot there to dig into. And I'm actually in the process of kind of like reorganizing it a bit to make it a bit more like easy to navigate and find those articles that are most relevant to what a couple is looking for help with. A new feature that we're getting ready to launch specifically is all about wedding venues. And I'm really excited about it. It should be live by the first of the year. It's taken a bit longer than we thought to get it all ready to go, but it's going to be amazing. And it's going to give couples just the ability to search for wedding venues that are, affordable and flexible, and offer the features that our community has told us are most important to them and most helpful for them. And so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, there's so many resources on the website. And another thing is that, we're constantly looking for other ways that we can help. And so whether you want to contact us on Instagram or join our Facebook group or leave a comment on the blog. Like if there's something in particular that you're looking for help with, like we love creating new resources to help with all the various, wedding planning questions that people have. So we are like, our ears and hearts are open to help you guys as much as possible.
I love that. Well, I'm going to have everything in the show notes. And I really think that if you are a couple listening right now that is in the beginning stages, to really go to Budget Savvy Bride and look at where this fits into your planning process. And if you're not loving Instagram, also go to Instagram. And you said you do have a private Facebook group as well. So we'll link that in the show notes. So if you want to be part of a community with other couples like you, I would love for you to join Jessica's group. And before we go, what would be one or two top tips that you would give couples that are just now starting to plan?
Well, my first tip is always to really just like get clear with your partner about like what the two of you actually want before you start letting anyone else kind of weigh in and give their opinions on what they think you should do. I think everyone knows that they're inundated with opinions from people like as soon as they get engaged. So really make the time and the space to sit down together and talk about like not just what kind of wedding you want to have, but also what kind of life you want to have together. Because when you know what you envision for your life, it can help you, define those priorities and values for your wedding planning process as well.
I love it. I feel like you co-wrote my ebook with me. It's like creating that shared mindset. It's the first chapter of my book because it's really, really important. Well, I love that what you're doing, and I love that you're adding in this new feature for venues as a wedding venue owner. I think that's wonderful, especially since it's one of the first pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
So I am very happy that I met you. I cannot wait to hear what's to come, and I would love to have you again on the show next year just to kind of see where Budget Savvy Bride is. And for those of you listening, I will have everything for y'all on our show notes. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay.